Hi guys, welcome back on the channel. On today's video, we're going to review Army of God rules from 1150 AD to 1350 AD by Broken Spirit Games. Here's an overview of the game written by the author, and here's an explanation of the troop types: knights, professionals, trained, and levy. Here we have the basing of the author. He uses 40 by 40 for his small miniatures, for skirmishers, and 80 by 40 for his larger heavy troops and close order and open order troops. But the rules can be played with any basing system. It doesn't really matter. Here is the contents. We're going to discuss about them during this flip through. And here what you require to play the game. Here, as I told you, the basing, regular units, irregular units. This is how the author bases them, and skirmish units. As I said, 80 by 40 for infantry and cavalry, and 40 by 40 for skirmishers. This is visually to show that the units are regular and regular, something that many of us do anyway. So we start about the statistics, the movement. As I told you, it's base related, so it doesn't matter the size of bases you have. So infantry, 2 bases, 80 mm, warband and skirmishers, 3 bases, 120 mm, heavy cavalry, 3 bases, 120 mm, and light medium cavalry, 4 bases, 160 mm. So that's the movement. Then you have the threat level of every unit depending on the quality. For example, foot knights have obviously a higher threat level than peasant militia. And here, let's see in the bottom the information a unit has in the army lists. So you have the unit's name, the type. Regular or irregular plays an important role in the game. Movement 4-1. 1 is the difficult ground. Training, that's trained. Threat level +1, armor +1. Special rules, devastating charge, and 19 points. So these are the information you will get in your army list that are included in this rulebook, and these will play part in the battle. So let's move. Then we have the armor rating. +2 is full mail hauberk, mail leggings, plus helm knight. This is for knights. +1 is for sergeant. +1 kilted gabelson is for militia, and 0 obviously is for troops that are peasants. You have training also, veteran, trained and untrained. This plays an important role because veterans have 5 morale points and 5 stamina points. Trained have 4 and 4. Untrained have 3 and 3. These stamina and morale points are very important, are reduced during battle according to actions performed or wounds inflicted, and when your stamina reaches 0, you cannot replenish it, and when you lose all your morale, you're out of the battle. It's a very nice, let's say, mechanics that plays important role in the battle, and you need to follow them because there are chances where your morale can be increased and your stamina can be increased as well. So there's a lot of strategy here. Then you have regular and irregular units, and that has to do with movement. Regular have to move specifically with specific way, like most rules. Irregular units move freely. It reminds me like of DBA, and there is quite an interesting combination of regular units moving irregularly for some circumstances, and that's quite a nice addition to the rules. Then you have special rule skills. There's some special rules that are added, as we saw previously, depending on the unit. So here we go for morale and stamina. So veterans have 5 morale and 5 stamina. Trained 4 and 4, and untrained units 3 and 3. And here is using stamina and morale. Let's read it. Stamina and morale are represented by 2d6 placed either on the base of the unit or at the back of them on the table. Each time a unit is required to lose a point of stamina or morale, they reduce the dice by 1. Once all stamina is reduced to 0, remove the dice. Once all units' morale is gone, remove the unit from the battlefield as it's destroyed or captured. Very often knights would be captured and ransomed back for large sums of money, whereas peasants would be killed where they stood. So that's the concept behind the stamina and morale. Now, how you lose stamina? These are situations where you lose stamina. So you lose stamina by fighting. Both units lose, regardless who is the winner. So that's quite a good idea. If a unit has withdraw skills, skirmishers that choose to move twice, and there is some captain cards. We're going to talk about them later, where you are losing stamina. So basically, it's hand-to-hand combat. Now, regaining stamina, you should stay still. You should not be shot at, you should not have combat, you should not be harassed by skirmishers, and you gain 1 stamina point. Very interesting. have to organize. But obviously, these rules have to be played with reserves, and you cannot gain obviously more stamina than your actual original point. And then you have exhaustion. If a unit becomes exhausted, that means you removed the stamina, then the unit plays as exhausted throughout the game, and obviously has negative modifiers. So here we go, morale, how you lose morale. Losing morale is lost in the following instances. Let's see here. Losing a round of combat, being shot at with missile weapons, captain's cards, these are the cards that may have a special rule, crossing rivers, being exhausted. Combat and morale special circumstances. Obviously, you have a devastating charge rule that you can reduce morale. A heavy charge and being charged in the flank or rear. All these reduce morale as well. And obviously destroying unit in combat or shooting. If a unit removes the enemy's last remaining points of morale, the victorious unit regains one of its own morale victory and lifts its spirits. A unit's morale may never be raised above the starting value. So again, this is, as we said, there is ways of gaining stamina by staying still. By destroying your opponent, you gain morale. So unit skill special rules. So you have, every unit has some special rules. So you have ambush, attack, devastating charge, obviously for mounted knights. You can read one if you want. Discipline, they're disciplined troops. A double move, fodder, Glen Riders. This is a quite good rule for Highland, for Scottish. Heavy charge, impetuous, pursue, and shield wall. All these are special rules that, and shield transformation here looks how it works. These are all special rules for units that are mentioned in the army lists. So let's see an example of the Scottish Chiltern. The Scottish Chiltern units spend the command point to form into Chiltern formation, and then the Chiltern counter is placed near them to show this. The unit is then charged in the rear by mounted knight unit. The Chiltern unit ignores the knight heavy charge special rule and gets a +2 bonus to the combat. The Chiltern is now classed as having no rear or flank and may not support other units or take support from other regular units. The unit is also immobile until he spends another command point as an activation to move back into regular formation. So that's a nice example. Yes, we're going to talk about it later in the rules that you roll a d6 and you have command points, and that's how you use them to move or do other actions. And there is a command pool that you can use one per turn. We're going to discuss this in the later parts of the flick through. Then another rule, harass. This is a very nice skirmish rule. And some units ignore armor versus combat. Some special units that have, for example, big, heavy weapons and devastating, so they ignore combat armor value. And some units ignore armor against shooting, obviously, some longbows from close range. Then you have units who are terrifying. Some units are so terrifying that to behold on the battlefield that they can drain the enemy's morale at the start of the battle. Units like this, for example, the Irish Gallowglass, have murderous reputation, and people fear them just as much as they do knight units. So woodsmen, and then there is other rules of volley fire for English longbowmen, obviously. Withdraw rule. There is another rule, withdraw. This is mostly for specialized troops and skirmishers. And then we'll go to terrain, explains terrain, woods, streams, scrubs, hills. All these terrains are something very quite interesting. This rule set are worth battle points. You can use them as mission objectives, and they will give you points. So hills can give you 10 points, for example, and gives advantages and disadvantages in shooting and hand-to-hand combat. Streams, roads, small lakes, villages, rocky outcrops. It's very good, but there is a rule behind every terrain piece. Ruins, church, villages. And here we're movement. So we have regular units that move straight ahead, can wheel and move or move and wheel, turn 90 degrees right or left, charge straight ahead, disorganize themselves, and move in any direction. That's a quite interesting rule. Irregular troops move basically like DBA. They move freely in a direction and charge straight ahead. Now you have battle lines. The battle lines, like the line of battle, units supporting each other, creating battle lines. And it's a nice rule because the battle lines here have also rare support. And then we're talking about moving straight ahead. For example, militia units have 2-to-1 movement statistics. This means that they can move 2 bases ahead. Battle lines, basically, let's read about battle lines. A battle line is 2 or more units that are touching each other, so corner to corner, side to side, end to end, and facing the same direction. Units can also be touching rear of another unit in a battle line and be classed as being part of the battle line. Battle lines move and will as a 1. This maneuver costs 1 command point and is a cheap way of moving your army whole and then individual. Whole battle lines may not charge together. Charging has to be done as an individual basis. So here are examples of movement: wheel and move, turn 90 degrees. And this is about charging. Quite interesting rule, how charging works. Close combat and shooting while it's disorganized. So obviously, when you're disorganized, you get negative modifiers. And what disorganized means, regular units can become disorganized in a number of ways. Units that become disorganized have broken formation and become seriously vulnerable, obviously. And here explains to you how you become disorganized. Joining battle line forming, that's a quite nice rule. So some regular units, the regular units that move, as you saw previously specifically, they can move irregularly if they want and lose all their advantages, but they can move irregularly. So they can decide to open ranks and move irregularly. So that's quite a good rule. But an exception to the disorganized rule, so you get disorganized when you move like in regular troop, is when you want to move regular unit sideways, backwards, or diagonally to join up another unit as a part of existing battle line or touching another unit to form one. A unit may perform the above action and not be classed as disorganized. So a unit that wants a regular unit that will be disorganized if it moves randomly like an irregular unit. If it wants to join a battle line and create a line of battle, it can do that without being classed disorganized. That makes sense. You open order, you run, but as soon as you reach your troops, your friendly troops, you close ranks again and you create a battle line. So that's a good rule. So you can move irregularly, but you will get disorganized if you are a formed troop or if you are a regular troop. But if you move irregularly to join a battle line immediately, then this doesn't count and you don't get disorganized. So that's a good rule. So here are other areas: scrubs, combat, and harass. So here more about shooting, crossbows, bows, and longbows, or shooting. You can shoot into combat. Apparently, a unit may never shoot into another unit that is in combat because of the fear that they will obviously hit their own man. The only time these rules do not apply is when a king and a hero has a special rule that overrules this one. Well, so that's quite interesting. Yeah, there are some special rules that can be used from the cards. So terrain and shooting, terrain that blocks line of sight. And here is explanation of shooting, measure distances, check at least half of the shooting unit's base has line of sight with the target, roll d6, add and take away modifiers, apply results. So let's see an example here. Unit A is armed with crossbows and declares a shot at Unit B because it's the closest unit. So yeah. Because Unit A is fully facing the front of Unit B is hit in the frontage. So yeah, it's hit in the frontage. Now, example 2C, Unit B was not there in the diagram. Unit A would have been able to target Unit C. This time, the Unit C is fully behind the frontage, so they can hit them in the flank or rear, receiving a +1 bonus. That's a very nice rule, actually. It has flank or rear shooting, something you don't find often in rules. And you get bonuses. So yes, here obviously it will hit C. Very straightforward on the flank and get advantages. So let's go here. We're talking about the procedure, getting pushed back by shooting. Another very nice rule, shooting flank or rear. We discuss it, and here is the shooting table. So 1 and 3 roll, nothing happens. Target is unwavered. 4, push enemy back 1 base. 5, push enemy back 1 base and reduce enemy's morale by 1 point. And 6, push enemy back 2 bases, reduce enemy morale 1 point. Override shield wall skills. So these will be the results after applying all the modifiers. These are some special rules for shooting: bow, longbow, and crossbow, and these are the shooting distances. Shooting and threat level. Some exceptional units have threat level. These units do not use their threat level as bonus in combat. They use it as bonus in shooting only. Make them very dangerous. Yes, this is longbows actually. Here is bonus in shooting. So if you have a volley fire, it's +1. If you shoot on a disorganized unit, get a +2. Shooting from a hill, +1. Shooting flank, +1. Per threat level, so if you have a threat level in shooting, or very, very high quality troops do +1. -1 shooting from woods, and for targets armor, -1 or -2. And then here is an example of warband being pushed back. Here is an example of shooting. Another example too about shooting. I want to read it. Let's read it. Scottish Highland bowmen standing on a hill shoot at some English militia spearmen that are showing their flank to them. The bowmen had a +1 for shooting from a hill and +1 for hitting them in the flank, giving them a +2 overall. The English spear militia have an armor +1, reducing the overall bonus to 1. So you see how these mechanics work. The raided bowman rolled d6, scoring a 5. This is converted to a 6 because of the bonus and causes spearman to retreat, losing 1 morale point and pushing them back to bases. Usually the spearman would ignore the pushback because the shield wall rule, but they are not immune to a full retreat. So here, 1 +1 for the hill, +1 for the flank, +1 for the armor militia. It's -1. Because more than half of the shooting unit's base is behind the target unit's frontage, it takes +1 bonus for hitting them in the flank or rear. This forces the target unit to pivot on the spot and to face the shooting unit before being pushed back. Yeah, that's another good rule set actually. Very good mechanic. So when you're shooting the flank on rear, you're not pushed back where you're facing. You have to turn, face the shooters, and get pushed back. This creates an amazing issues of problems that can created by you falling to your comrades, and it makes sense because when you're shot on the flank, you turn and you run away from the flank. You don't go parallel to it. Another really good rule set. It's a really very good rule set. See, you see here an example. Here is the front. You've been shot by the Highland bowman on the flanks. It has to turn and fall back like this. It has to pivot, face it, and fall back. A very good rule. Here are the combat rules. Combat sequence. Both players add up their armor rating and threat levels, taking into account special rules to negate armor and being in heavy terrain. Regular units and bonuses for support by other regular units. Both units look at the bonus list and check the combat bonus table for any other bonuses they may have. Attacking player adds any bonus from command tokens. Both units roll d6. The unit with the highest score looks at the combat table and follows any outcomes. Both units lose 1 point of stamina. So you have +1 point for threat level. We saw it in the units reference sheet before. +1 for each point of armor, +1 for regular unit supporting combat, +1 for each regular unit flank or rear, +1 for each command token added to the combat, for being closest to the center of a hill if you're at a hill, +1 for attacking a disorganized unit, +2, +1 for armor if defending village fortifications. Regular units have +0 armor and threat level if in heavy terrain. So heavy terrain creates problems in melee, obviously, not only movement. So here it's an example how it works, the rules. So here's a combat table. It's the same, it's stalemate, so the results, if it's the same, it's stalemate. 1 and 2, gain ground, push the enemy back. 3 and 4, victory, push the enemy back. Reduce enemy's morale by 1. And 5, it's a slaughter, push the enemy back 1 base and reduce the enemy's morale by 1 and increase the winner's morale by 1. So here's the explanation of the combat results. Here is some examples of how the combat is and the support. So the unit in the center that doesn't fight can support. The support, charging in the flank on rear, examples, multiple units in combat, and other examples how this works. And this unit's piling up and lending support, so that's quite interesting. And now here are your command points. So this is how the rules work. You command, and that's important for you to understand the mechanics. Command points represent the general's orders, getting through to its army and critical points of the battle. Command points in Army of God are an important strategic factor, and as such, you should be prepared to fight a battle with a minimum of them each turn. At the start of the player turn, the player rolls a d6 and denotes how many they have to spend that turn. Command points can be spent as follows: move a unit or a battle line, charge a unit, adding spirit points to your command pool, adding combat or shooting bonuses from your command pool. You can add only one per turn in your command pool, and you cannot use more than two if I'm not mistaken. Here, moving units, moving a battle line, charging units, all explaining, and this is the battle line. Now here's a command pool. You may only use 1 point from your d6 roll per turn using your command pool, and here is examples of how you use your command pool. You add bonuses basically, but there is a limitation. And here's how to win a game, and that's quite interesting. I like this terror test. Let's read this. At the start of the battle, two forces look upon each other across the field, and this is when the doubt kicks in. The hearts of the non-knights units. Knights were expected to die gloriously in the battle with honor, and it was something they had trained for all their lives. Knights were expected to stand and face overwhelming odds and fight courageously for their land, titles, and lords. In reality, many knights in this period were not killed in the battle and were often used to make huge amounts of money as ransoms because of their families, or so be swapped with other hostages. Armies would bring as many knights as possible to the battle and instill fear to the sensed and hopelessness to the levied and conscripted troops of the enemy. So once deployed, it has been completed, 1 terror point is accumulated for each unit of knights that you have. Bellow glass units and certain heroes may contribute in this pool as well. This number is important to remember or make a note of. The maximum number of terror is an army may have is 5 in any circumstances. So you, depending on the knights you have a terror number. So kings and heroes. Every army has kings and heroes with special rules. So you have, in Royalist England, you have King John and King Edward I. You have Army of God, Robert Fitzwalter, Simon de Montfort. Scotland, Robert the Bruce. Every of these kings and heroes gives specific advantages to the army. So here here are the rules, special rules. Royalist Army of England, special rules, and they are the army lists. Here is Army of God, English Barons. Again, the army list. So I told you have movement, threat level, armor, training, and unit type, and special rules. And here is the consistency of the army, suggested by the author. Northern Army of France, again, Royal Army of Scotland, Rebel Army of Wales. Here we have armored longbow, European mercenaries and special rules. Here it is. And here, setting up the game, there's decks, general deck, captain's deck, and terrain deck. We'll see it very quickly. Here is how you can set up the game, some examples for 2x2 table, 3x3. It can be played in a small battle. Terrain deck, so it tells you the terrain deck, the general's deck. So captain's deck, you have captains in your army. The captains and the are incorporated in a unit, so you don't have to have separate rules for the commanders. I mean, in a way of movement, they are part of a group. They're already incorporated. So you have deadly volley, deadly assault. These are captains who have each unit of knights. In every unit of knights, you have a captain that leads it. So every captain has some characteristics. So you can have a drilled, camp raid, deadly assault, deadly volley. So this would be good. A scout. So how the order of battle? So terror test if you're broken. Roll a d6 for command points. Remove their disorganized counters and change counters for units chasing units off the table. Movement. Place a command counters from command pool. Shooting. Regain stamina from units that did not move and shoot in combat. Here are some examples of terror test. Battle points, other examples here, drawing terrain objectives. And here is the quick reference sheet. Here is the counters, and here the author provides the terrain deck and the captain's deck and the general's deck. So guys, I have to say it's a really, really good rule set. I am going to fight a few battles with it. It has really brilliant concepts. You can find it in Broken Spirit Games. There is a Facebook page. You can contact the author. It's quite good price, and you get a very good rule set that covers a period that it's not very well covered of early hundred or of the early medieval, high medieval, like the Baron Wars. But also at the same time, you can incorporate it in your 100 Years' War very easily, and even Wars of the Roses. Anyway, this is guys from me. I hope you enjoyed this flip through. Thank you so much for watching, and bye bye.